Hello friends, welcome back for some more of the walkthrough of Oxygen Not Included's base game. This time, like we alluded to last video, we're going to talk about ranching. And this is mostly because we're reliant on only the coal that we mine out among the map, and we're not producing it relatively renewably. Whoa, why am I deleting all these ladders? That was a mistake. Okay, so what I'm going to need is a couple of sections that are pretty much all mined out. And I'll show you what we're going to do with these. First of all, we need a place to actually ranch these hatches. So I'm going to create a couple of areas that are closed off by doors, kind of like this. And this is one of the reasons why I build this way, because this inner area is exactly 96 tiles, and that is the maximum size that you can have for a stable, which is what you will need to ranch something. So, yeah, there you go. So I'm going to put a couple of stations in the middle of here, which are going to be grooming stations. You will, of course, need the research for this, which is sitting up here. There you go. And then I'm going to put a food, or rather a critter drop-off, somewhere in here. I'm going to put it towards one of the sides that's kind of away from the center of my base, because the second setup is going to go over here. That's going to be to replenish these over time. I also will want to be able to ship out anything that these hatches produce, which is going to be eggs, and it's going to be coal, of course, and meat, I guess, if any of them die. So, yeah, we'll get all this stuff set up for shipping. I'm going to need more refined metal, so I probably should get this going. Let's say 45. Sure, why not? Once I have these set up, I want to set these priorities to relatively high, so that if any of my generic or, like, all-purpose duplicates have some time, they'll prioritize this because it's a pretty important thing to do. The other thing I'm going to do is set this to accept hatches and hatchlings. There's also stone hatches and stone hatchlings that I want to put in here too. The sage ones, don't worry about them. There's a lot more to ranching these, but this is really the most effective that you can get. So I'll set both of these to a priority of 7. And then if you see any piles that look like this, they're probably hatches that are burrowed there. So you can use this wrangle option and just grab the hatches out of the ground like that. There's probably some other ones running around here. There's some stuck in the ground right here. So if you see any of them walking around, you will want to wrangle them so that you can put them in one of these rooms to then be groomed and basically tamed so that you can start getting supplies from them. The other thing they're going to need is food, obviously. And the two types of food that I want to feed to these hatches are sandstone and sedimentary rock. Sorry, it's hard to talk and do things at the same time. So, you want sandstone and sedimentary rock to be reserved for hatch food. If you're using other things, that might be a problem long term. Like, there's a bunch of ways you can end runs by feeding them the wrong type of food. For example, if you feed them your sand, that's going to be a huge issue. You definitely don't want to do that, and the amount of things that these guys can eat is huge. This whole list is things that they can eat. So, I try to reserve sandstone and sedimentary rock for these hatches because it's very common. If we set up our shipping systems, it will be shipped out constantly. I won't have to run things manually back and forth. Why do I feel like there's way more hatches on the map somewhere that I can't find? They will unburrow at night, so they're a little bit easier to find then, but we do have a handful so far. But yeah, all they're going to do is just eat the material that you feed them, and they will excrete coal, and you can send that coal back into your system. Whoa, I totally hooked this up wrong. What am I doing? Set up our systems for sending our hatch food over there. Maybe something like this. So this I'll spec for sandstone and sedimentary rock, and we'll send it over there as soon as we get it. You will want to make sure this is set up pretty quickly afterwards, because once you tame these hatches, they will die if they are not fed. So you'll want to stay on top of that. Now that it's nighttime, let me see if we can spot any hatches here really quickly. Unless we got most of them. There's a couple over here that we need to get. Duplicates are just taking a while. There's one. There's a couple. There's 3. Wow. Okay. There we go. Found them. Alright, so once we have those things set up, now this covers the case for their eating needs. If they produce eggs, which they will produce a lot more frequently if they are tamed, I'm going to need a place to ship those out to as well. But I want to have them sorted either for replenishment of hatches. So if I need more hatches, I want to easily be able to have access to that. Also, if I have way too many eggs, which is going to happen, I will want to turn that into some type of food to help supplement my food needs. Our food needs are good, but I'm holding on about 11 duplicants right now until I get everything else stabilized. So I'm going to build another setup over here. Start just putting in some floors here really quickly. And this setup is going to be kind of particular. I'll explain the different parts of it. So first of all, I'm going to take one of these mechanized airlocks and I'm just going to put it on the ground like that. It'll make sense in a bit. Then I'm going to have doors on either side of this, like that, which is just going to be an entry and exit to this. Actually, we don't need one on the other side. Let's just build a wall. This will be the room that I have all of my hatches in that are going to be to replenish the counts in here. The counts that we want to put in these rooms, which I didn't set accidentally, is 8. You don't want to hold more than that in one room because these hatches still need a certain amount of space to be able to live comfortably, and if you overcrowd them, then they're going to stop eating as much and stop producing as many eggs. It's really not very efficient. So, in this room, we need a critter drop-off so that if we do get any hatches that are hatched in this room, that if they are in excess, we can move them from one place to the other. What are you doing? It's just standing there. He runs away. Alright, then what we're going to need is a couple of items for shipping in here. One is going to be a conveyor chute. For any excess hatch eggs, we want them to go to this location. We want an auto sweeper to be able to move stuff around. So like if a egg hatches here, we want the eggshells because that's going to help us in making stuff later. We want a conveyor receptacle just so we can send stuff back. So I'll put it like here. Sure, why not? And then the last thing that's pretty essential for this is critter sensors. These critter sensors, again, the automation can look a little bit intimidating, but I'll walk through it here just to be kind of thorough. I'm going to put critter sensors in these rooms as well, because these rooms are going to tell me when they don't have enough hatches, which will allow me to move them back and forth between these rooms. We'll get everything hooked up here really soon. For this critter sensor, you just want to hook it directly into the conveyor chute. This is going to say that I want this conveyor chute to be open if there are not enough eggs in this room. I want to keep enough eggs in this room so that they are continually producing more hatches, so that I can move the new hatches into this room as the populations start to fall. Because these hatches will die over time. We do need a way to replace them that isn't going to be something like remembering to go back and wrangle these hatches every once in a while. So, I'm going to set up something like this, which is going to be to determine when we want eggs to be dropped here. We're going to need to hook this up to a new line. This new line is going to be for hatch eggs only. We'll have a second one here that I'll talk about in just a second. So on this line, we want to send hatch eggs, which are going to go down like this. But they're also going to keep going past this line, because if this has too many eggs, I want them to go somewhere else. And that somewhere else is going to be a room right next door, which probably doesn't need to be that big, actually. Maybe... that might... I think that'll fit everything. So if it goes over here, this room is going to be my drowning tank, which is a very lovely thought, no doubt. But basically, this is going to be a way to use the excess eggs to generate a whole bunch of meat, which I can then cook and turn into barbecue, which is going to be another very strong food source over time. This room is also going to need a conveyor belt, or rather a conveyor loader and an auto sweeper, so we'll go ahead and throw those two things in here. Since these two are for shipping back, I would just want to connect those to the same lines that I have for my hatch rooms already, which I forgot to put those up here. We don't have enough metal, actually. We'll come back and we'll place those in a bit. But this one just needs to go to one of the drop-offs. So I'll have it just come over like this, come back into the drop-offs, or rather the conveyor chutes like that. There. The last bit of automation for this that we're going to need to hook up is when we need more stuff in here. So these critter drop-offs are only for duplicants manually moving hatches back and forth. I want a sensor that matches this number that's going to tell me or send a signal out of this room to say, hey, I need more hatches. So I want it to be, if it's ever below 8 critters, only critters, then this is going to send a green signal. Same thing with this one, below 8 critters. Those two are going to be hooked up to an OR gate, which we have not used yet, I don't think. Let me back this up a little bit. This OR gate is basically going to be if either one of these needs more hatches in the room, it's going to send a green signal out. This green signal is going to be sent into a NOT gate that's connected to this door. I'll show you exactly how this works here in just a second. So, 2 critter sensors hooked into an OR gate. The OR gate is then hooked into a NOT, and the NOT is hooked into the door. The whole Englishized version of this is basically if either of these rooms need hatches, it will make sure this door is closed, which will enable usage of this critter drop-off. If both of these rooms are happy and they have enough hatches in them, this door will be open and this critter drop-off won't be able to be used by your duplicants. So that'll basically disable the building because this doesn't have an auto input or anything like that that we could make use of. So the door is our next best option. So, in this room, we want to set auto wrangle surplus. The max critter should just be 1. And you want to set it for a critter that will never be in there. I usually like to choose these shine nymphs because they almost never exist beyond the early part of the game. Unless you're specifically trying to do something with them, which, again, I don't see much of a reason to. The critter sensor that's in here to ask for more eggs, there's not really an exact thing that I have been happy with. I usually will choose like 7 or 8 eggs in here before I will allow them to pass into the drowning tank. And of course, because this is a drowning tank, we're going to need some type of liquid in there to submerge them in. I'm going to grab some of this salt water that's over here because I don't want to dip into my fresh water supplies if I don't have to. And I don't want to use polluted water because it's just going to gas off. So I'm going to come in here and grab this salt water, but we're obviously not going to have this whole setup done within the scope of this video. But that's kind of the idea that I'm going for. So I'll create some like pool or a couple places to pump this out and get it in there. I could also use this water, but this is still fresh and cool water that I might want to use, so never mind, I'll just leave that there. So yeah, this looks like a lot for the time being. It might be a little bit advanced, but this is a lot of fancy ways to minimize your duplicant's time spent ranching these hatches and getting a renewable source of coal. Our coal we're very dependent on that to keep our power going, and if we don't have power, we can't really filter our oxygen, we can't grow any of our food, we can't cook. There's a whole bunch of things that we can't do if we run out of power. So we do want to make sure that we have infrastructure set up to get coal produced on the regular from our ranches. Okay, some other things that I want to talk about before we end this video, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing in the next one, is if you ever encounter any of these puffs, I don't know if there's any more on the map, but I did kill one earlier, and that's because I do not want them. If you do see any puffs on the map, here's one. If you see any puffs on the map and they're in some easily accessible spot for your duplicants, just attack it. These are not really useful at all unless you're running a weird setup, so I would just say to go ahead and kill those. They will use up your oxygen, and it'll just be a waste. Like, there you go. They're sucking in some oxygen right now. So, yeah, I don't want these. You can go ahead and kill them if you find them. I also am going to be setting up a new area to produce oxygen for me. So, I'm just going to go ahead and deconstruct these because the pressure in my base is getting a little bit low. Ideal pressure for your base is probably about 2,000 grams per tile, so I'm only at about half of that. Another thing you can do to alert you of issues with that is you could set up a Atmos sensor and connect it to an automated notifier. I'll just set up this system right now because I think it's pretty handy, especially for players that are newer to the game. So I'm going to set up a Atmos sensor that's going to be connected to a filter gate that's pointing to a automated notifier. The way I'm going to set this up is I'm going to set my filter gate to about, I don't know, 45 seconds. I don't want to have this go off all the time if this detects low pressure, because if it hits like a single pip of carbon dioxide or hydrogen or something like that, it's going to flip out and let me know that there's a problem. So I'm going to set this to like below 1,000 grams. If I start getting low, I'll connect it up to this notifier, and then you can have it say basically whatever you want, like low oxygen, and it can give you any kind of different effect for it. It can zoom you in, it can pause the game, it can do a whole bunch of different things. So I'm just going to set that up to let me know that, hey, there's a problem in my base and I need to fix it. You could set that up for your water systems or for your air systems to let you know that you're running low on something and you might need to do something about it. So, tooltip, sure. Hey, you, go fix it. There. And we don't necessarily need to zoom, but you get the idea. That's a good little thing to set up here to let you know that you might not be having the resources that you need in order to keep your colony alive. So, cool little idea there. Finally, the last thing, and especially if you're following along and playing on the same map, the other ice biome that I want to get into is over here. You can barely see it if you turn on the temperature settings. I was going to try to get to the one way up here, but it's so far out of the way that I don't want my duplicates to have to run here all the time to get food. So I'd rather just go to this one that's a little bit closer. So I'll be digging into there probably within the next video or so. Finally, let's talk about the next thing we're going to be doing in the upcoming video, which is going to be our permanent Great Hall space. So one thing you might notice is there's only enough space in here for about 8 duplicates to continue to eat, which means 3 of them are not getting the benefit of my Great Hall right now. It's fine because they're newer duplicates, they don't have as much morale need. I will eventually need to fix that though, and I will need to have them have a big enough room for all of them to eat. Plus, some of my other duplicates are going to start hitting the ceiling of their morale right now. I'm going to need a way to manufacture more for them. So I'm going to force them to go through this area, which is the nature reserve. So we'll deal with that in the next video. Really quickly, let's make sure that all this stuff is set up to run correctly. So yeah, on this one, I want to send only hatch eggs. So critter egg, hatch eggs. And then on this one, I want to send every other type of egg that I want to turn into meat that I might find. So if I find drecklets, not hatchlings, I don't want those. Puffs, sage hatchlings, not shovels, we'll leave those alone. Not the fish, we don't want them to get in there. So anything else that you might encounter that you want to just drown and turn into meat, you can put it in this one. And then this one's just going to be sent straight into this. So you might need to redo some of this to make sure that it doesn't get confused and that it can all get to the right spot. But that's the whole idea, is I want to send all the excess eggs over into this area for management. But yeah, that covers it for ranching and anything else that might be going on in the base. We'll start getting this area set up really quickly, maybe another handful of cycles, and I'll be back for another video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you back here really soon.